Well, good afternoon and welcome to Delivering the Vision, a special webinar looking at the transformation of project delivery in Saudi Arabia. And this webinar is brought to you by MEED together with HKA. My name is Richard Thompson. I am the editorial director of MEED. I will be your moderator for this broadcast, and I will try and get as many of your questions answered and points made as possible. So please use the stage tab on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side of your screen to send in questions throughout. The purpose of today's broadcast is to look at the Saudi Arabian projects market, and particularly the construction projects market. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is going through an enormous transformation, as everybody knows. It's the biggest economy in the region, and the Vision 2030 strategic vision is really driving a new generation of projects with the Public Investment Fund as the primary delivery agency for these projects. And we have, Neom, $500 billion Neom project. We have the Qiddiya Entertainment City, the Red Sea project, Amala, Dariyah Gate, a long list of PIF projects, as well as other private investment projects that are driving the market. But the conditions in the market are changing. We're seeing the policy needs for increased level of local content, Saudi staff on projects, and Saudi content, produced content in the supply chain. We're also seeing the growing requirement to reduce the carbon footprint of the construction industry and decarbonize the economy more generally, and of course the digital transformation that is changing the way we work together. So all of this is part of the big picture and how the Saudi market is expanding, accelerating, and transforming at the same time. And we will look at all of these issues over the next hour. So I'm delighted that we have a panel, a fantastic panel of experts to bring us some insights on the Saudi market. Nasser Al-Shawaf is the director and executive board member of Al Bawani Holding Company. And Al Bawani, as I'm sure everybody knows, is one of the big names, one of the giants of the Saudi construction industry at the moment. And Nasser is giving us his time to provide some insights from the Al Bawani perspective. I'm also delighted that we are joined by Haroon Niazi, who is a partner and head of the Middle East for consultant HKA. And Haroon is going to present some of HKA's recent findings from their annual CRUX report, which looks at issues such as disputes and the causes of disputes in the construction projects market. And then last but not least, we have Catherine Joshi, who is a chartered civil engineer and is the technical director at HKA. And one of the key points I think that we're going to address today is how should we be setting up projects to maximize productivity, to reduce waste, and to help Saudi Arabia achieve its Vision 2030 goals. So Kathy will provide us with her insights on setting up projects correctly. So together, our three excellent panelists will provide keynote thoughts and a framework for the conversation. But I invite you, the audience, to really engage with this conversation. You have joined us today because you are interested in this topic, and we are interested to try and answer your questions and to hear your questions and also your observations. So you can use, on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see in the top corner, there is a stage tab. That is where you submit your questions, and we can see those questions as they come in. And then once the panel discussion is finished, the panel will run for an hour. We have a live networking session that you can meet other people who are on the call today. That is on the left-hand side of your screen. You can see there is a tab on the left-hand side that says networking. So once we finish the panel, you can go into that networking tab, and we will stay open for half an hour, and you can meet other people and discuss things in a private setting after the panel. So that is the purpose of today. Thank you for being with us, and I look forward to hearing your comments. So I'm now going to go into the panel, and I would like to start with Nasser Al-Shawaf, Director and Executive Board Member at Al Bawani Holding Company. Nasser, thank you so much for your time today. Perhaps you could just give us some of your keynote thoughts on the Saudi construction market and project market at the moment? You know, what are the drivers and how is it changing? Yeah, just to sort of give us a flavor for this conversation.
Very pleased to be with you, Richard, and thank you for inviting me. The market landscape in Saudi has been changing since the government announced the audacious Vision 2030 vision. To realize this vision, many changes had to take place. Most notably, really, is to reduce the dependence on oil revenue and government spending, which meant that the government had to push to transform the economy, to come up with different revenue streams and income streams. And they identified a number of sectors, tourism, entertainment, they want to spend more on infrastructure, attract talents, technology, and what have you. And that is really changing the market profoundly. We used to take life relatively easy by just depending on government spending, Ministry of Finance. You have the traditional tenders, you bid, they'll do an evaluation, they'll go with the lowest bidder, and you get 20% during the boom years down payment. So life was relatively easy. Now that has changed because the spending is much more rational now. Every ministry and every organization must really go through a lot of scrutiny to get something approved. And the government really promoted all the institutional spending, the public investment fund companies to help in realizing the vision. They're promoting local content and what have you. So really the market has changed from very traditional, relatively simple form of contracts and spending to highly sophisticated clients that are very demanding. All the PIF companies, even the pension funds now, they own their own investment arms, the Public Pension Agency or the GUSI, the two giant pension funds. You know, they have.
If I can ask, Nasser, sorry to interrupt, but what does that mean for you and, you know, as a contractor and for people involved in the construction supply chain? What does that change mean?
It means you really need to be more fit. You need to be more agile, adapt to the market. Contract conditions have changed. You know, the Ministry of Finance had a very classic form of contract that's very simplistic, and you cannot change it. They cannot change it. You cannot change it. So it's pretty basic. The maximum penalty is 10%, and you know it's everyone is used to it. Now it's very different. You know, they have very stringent kind of conditions. You need to be much more aware of what you're getting into. It works both ways as well. You can be more demanding from clients, but you definitely need to have much more commercial expertise in-house. Risk management has taken center stage now in our organization, from kind of, you know, why should you worry too much about that? You know, the contracts are quite simple and all standard. So you really had kind of to develop and step up commercially to be more sophisticated, and some of the requirements as well have become different. So now you have design and build contracts, where historically, you know, you were just a contractor with a remeasured contract. Now, well, no, you fold in the designer under you as a contractor, and you need to claim more responsibility. The competition has become more limited in a way, which is good, but you really had to become more fit and resilient.
And if I can also ask, on, you know, you mentioned in your at the beginning of your comments about some of the changing requirements. So the need for local content is a changing requirement. The carbon footprint, you know, decarbonizing the economy is a changing requirement. Digitalization is a sort of industry change. how does that affect things like costs, and who carries those? If there are additional costs, does the client carry them, or how does that affect things?
It usually takes some time until contractors really reflect that increase properly and adequately. So initially you need to weather some of that, but we're very active in the market. On average, we place 2 bids a week, just kind of to give you an idea about our activity in the market. So obviously for everything ongoing, we need to absorb part of that. There are some change in law provisions in the contracts, so you can push and transfer part of that cost increase to clients, but some of it you really had to absorb it. So there is a bit of a delay, but in a way the government is intentionally and purposely pushing contractors and market participants to become more efficient, more productive, because they believe that when people are more productive, you will be able to pay them more, and when you pay people more, then it will be easier for you to employ Saudis as well and invest in training and development. So there is a plan. Part of it is to get more income as a government, to diversify from oil revenue, and part of it actually is to push you to have a more productive work environment and workforce.
And one final question, Nasser, before we move on to Haroon. So Saudi Arabia and the government, the Public Investment Fund, PIF, are behind a huge, array of giga projects. The Neom, the Red Sea project, the Qiddiya, massive undertakings. Is there a risk about a lack of capacity or a shortage of resources, and that's going to be inflationary, and we're going to see costs going up? Or how well equipped is Saudi Arabia in terms of capacity at the moment?
Yeah, there is an issue with capacity. Just keep in mind, those new breed of clients are pretty sophisticated, so they're not going to overspend. And if they felt that they're not really getting the prices and the cost they were looking for, they will retender, they will repackage. They are demanding, they know what they're doing. So they'll phase it out if they felt that the market is unable to really get back to them with the budgets they were trying to meet.
Okay, thank you, Nasser. A wonderful set of comments. Thank you. I'm going to move now to Haroon Niazi, who's the head of Middle East for consultant HKA. Haroon, you have some slides, and HKA produces its annual CRUX report every November, and it looks at the disputes and causes of disputes in the region. And I think you have got some slides looking at some of your findings on the Saudi market. So if I can hand over to you, Haroon, for a few minutes to give us some keynote thoughts on the latest CRUX report findings.
Sure, Richard. Thanks for that. I will have a go at getting this working right from the beginning. I think Nasser said some really interesting points that I will touch upon. And I really like the use of the words. He said the contractors need to be fit, agile, and resilient. And for me, HKA's CRUX research really helps in terms of identifying issues that both employers and contractors are facing on construction projects, and how those issues really need to be addressed to ensure that you can be fit, agile, and resilient. So what is CRUX? As you mentioned, Richard, CRUX is a piece of research that HKA carries out annually. And globally, in our 2020 research, we looked at over 1,100 projects across 88 countries to identify what are the main causes of claims and disputes on construction projects. And then the research allows us to identify what these key issues are, and allows contractors and employers to look at these issues and understand and develop process and procedures to overcome them. So if I look at Saudi Arabia in particular, and we're able to drill down in our research to look at country-specific issues, sector-specific issues, and contract type-specific issues. So if I focus and drill down on Saudi projects, so we studied 78 projects in Saudi, estimated average capex of $1.84 billion. So these are really the big projects being undertaken in the kingdom. And what was our key finding? Our key finding was that on these projects, the average extension of time claimed was 86% of the original contract duration. So essentially what we're saying is on these mega projects, it's taking more or less double the time that the contractor is claiming as an EOT. That in itself is a key issue that we can talk about at length. And the average cost.
Sorry, Haroon, can I just clarify on that? So what you are saying from the projects that you researched in Saudi Arabia, 78 projects with a huge capex value, your findings are that projects are taking nearly double, 86% overrun. They're taking almost double the length of time to deliver that was originally planned. Is that what
Correct.
You're saying?
That's absolutely what I'm saying, Richard.
Okay, well, that's a huge talking point. So please send in your questions if you have. I certainly have a few, but carry on with your slides and we can come back to that. Sure.
I'm just going to whiz on to the next slide because so our key findings here are what are the top causes of claims and disputes in the kingdom? Number one is change in scope. So whether it's variations, employer side or contractor initiated design changes, etc., change in scopes are a big cause of claims and disputes in the kingdom. Secondly, the late issuance of design information. So NASA spoke about the changes in the way projects are being procured, contractors having to take on design and build or EPC contracts. So design information is going to be key as we move forward over the next few months and years. Access to site, restricted work areas remains a key issue. And finally, the other two issues, late approvals and contract interpretation. Now, this in itself is a very important issue because if we see in Saudi Arabia, and NASA touched upon the changes that we're experiencing now in contract form. Historically, government contracts, we had the public works contract that was used time and time again for the larger construction projects. We're now moving away to a more sophisticated model of contracting. We're seeing the FIDIC used, we're seeing an amended form of FIDIC. Other more established developers have their own standard form of contract. So contract interpretation is a big issue and a cause for claims and disputes in the kingdom. And it's important that both employers and contractors really, from our perspective, is use the CRUX research to their advantage. It's there to help decision making. It's there to help everyone make better choices on projects. I can whiz on, Richard. I've got some more slides.
Well, perhaps, I think that you've given us a huge amount of food for thought and conversation. If I can ask you a couple of quick comeback questions, and then I would be interested to hear Nasser's comments as well. But on the first point there, change of scope, I presume that this slide is sort of ranked so that number one issue is change of scope, and that's something I hear about a lot across the region. You know, the project the client changes his mind, and actually sometimes they'll change the scope verbally rather than in writing, and the designs haven't been completed before the construction has started, and all that sort of thing. Is this something that is particularly challenging in Saudi Arabia, or is this kind of a regional issue or global even?
It's definitely a regional issue, and what one is able to do on our CRUX on our website by following the CRUX link is by doing you can do a comparison, for example, across the GCC. So across the GCC, it's interesting to do the comparisons, and you see in different countries where these issues rank in a different order. Definitely a regional issue, but more so in the kingdom. My experience, for example, if we talk about design, preparation of design, lead into a project, we've already seen that projects are 86% delayed. So you want to get on site early. Our contractors getting on site with incomplete design, Is that therefore a cause for delay? Is change in scope because of an incomplete design a big issue for the projects? The research tells us it is.
And then at the other end of the spectrum, or it's not the end of the spectrum, but point number 4 on your slide, late approvals. So the first 3 points, or at least the first 2, maybe the first 3 points are about that, the design's not being complete or changes. But the approvals, is that about sign off of work? That's about getting payments. Is that correct? So that's a slightly different thing.
Sure. I mean, it touches on a number of issues. It touches on approvals for engineering issues, design issues, variations, and also it will touch on late certification, etc., which all culminate into causes of claims and disputes. But you have a multi-layered approval approach. You need the consultant's approval on site. You then need an employer's approval, other approvals. So the multi-layered approach is a cause of delay.
Well, I've got one more question. Actually, I've just seen a question that has come in from an audience member. And if you are watching this and want to send in some questions to any of our panelists, please use the stage tab. It's on the top right-hand corner of the screen, and you can send in a question. But there's a question here that has come in, Haroon. It says, all of the delaying factors that you have exposed by Haroon appear to be employer caused. There is no mention of manpower issues, lack of performance, productivity issues, and very common causes of failure on the contractor's side. Would you say that is, is that a fair point that this questioner has said that these problems are all coming from the employer side, and is that where the major issue sits with the client?
I mean, I think what the question raises some great points. It's a very good question, but it's not necessarily only an employer issue. Change in scope can initiate from contractors as well. We see value engineering being a big part of contractors moving forward. Contractors who have taken on risk in terms of design and build, for example, not understanding their own scope. So change in scope can very much be a contractor issue as well as an employer issue. Contract interpretation can very much be a contractor issue, an engineer issue, a consultant issue on site, or an employer's issue. So it's not necessarily a one-side issue in terms of the employer being the main cause. But I absolutely take on board comments from the audience in terms of workforce, manpower issues that contractors do face as a potential cause for delay. If you go through the website, sorry, Richard, there are a number of other issues. These are just the top 5 ranked in our research.
Well, I want to come to Nasser now. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Please keep sending your questions in. And I know that Haroon has there's more slides in his slide deck. We will share the slides with everybody who is registered today. So we will send you the slides, and possibly we can come back, Haroon, to some of the other slides later on in the conversation. Nasser, if I can come to you just for a sort of immediate reaction to that. So Haroon has set out some of the key reasons for delays or disputes. Does that reflect your own experiences?
Okay, I always say the truth lies in between, really. And we do have those debates internally in the company when we review our projects, and my team would always push back and completely blame clients. The reality is that many clients are being demanding and sometimes unrealistic, but they all have targets that they want to meet, and they're very ambitious targets. But despite all the delays, I would say we still finish projects much faster than they're finished probably anywhere else in the world. So for instance, a project in Europe would take 3.5 years. They want to finish it in 18 months, which is really impossible. We'll probably end up finishing in 2.5 years. It's still much faster than what you would experience in Europe or the US, albeit, yes, it's from the contract, it's pushed back.
That's an interesting point, because on Haroon's first slide, it said about the projects being, from the research projects that they looked at, nearly double the length. The actual delivery was double the length of the original plan, but that could actually reflect an ambitious original plan. So that sounds like that might be what you're saying, actually.
Absolutely. I would say highly ambitious, not only ambitious. So they want you to do the whole thing in 18 months, and in reality, it's extremely difficult. At the end of the day, the very important comment I want to share, reflect on Harun's presentation, is that things historically in Saudi have always been done in kind of good faith and more relationship-based, and the trust you build with clients more than contracts. Now, this is changing somehow. I wouldn't say that, oh no, contracts are everything now, but it's somewhere in between. So contracts are becoming more important because they're not the traditional simplistic contracts. However, clients would always work with you if they believe you've done everything you can to really achieve their targets. So there's a lot of give and take, as long as you're really building the trust and working with them in good faith. They'll find a way to work with you and support you.
Okay, thank you. Very good points. Now we've got loads of questions that are coming in. Please keep them coming. We will come to them in a moment. But I now want to move to Catherine Joshi. I hope you don't mind if I call you Kathy. Now you are technical director for HKA, a chartered civil engineer. And I mean, obviously, you know the CRUX report findings inside out, but I'm quite interested to know, how can we set things up better? How can Saudi Arabia set its projects up better so we mitigate these risks and remove these risks?
Yeah, I also agree. I love the expression of you to be fit, agile and resilient. But I think the project team as a whole, so all the stakeholders involved, the designers, the employers and the contractors, should collectively be fit, agile and resilient. To me, having seen some of the disputes that have arisen on big projects, the most important thing is the early introduction of robust project protocols. And that starts from the very beginning of the design phase. I think we touched on earlier on the scope of works, but the clearly defined scope of work for both the designers and the contractors, even though in huge projects you are going to have changes. If the scope is clearly defined from the start, you have a reference point to go back to, and that makes everybody's life so much easier if there are changes. The management of design, obviously technology has moved us on enormously over the last decade or more, and that can really be harnessed in these mega projects. With so much going on in Saudi, I'm sure there will be many international consultants also involved. And to set up early on how the communication happens between the international consultants for the design phase, and also the issue of the design information. One of the causes of delays was the late issue of design information. So if that's set up and managed right from the start, that will definitely minimize some of the delays. Then the management of change should carry on throughout the project life, during both the design phase and the construction phase, with due diligence being applied throughout the planning, tender and award of the contracts. One of the other delay aspects picked up on was delay in approvals. There's such a varied number of projects going on in Saudi at the moment, but one of the key issues is stakeholder approvals. When you have projects like Jeddah Metro, Riyadh Metro, where you literally carving a metro through, a bustling huge city, it's so important to have protocols set up and how to manage those. So very much early planning and then due diligence throughout the project life.
Can I just ask, Kathy, on? So part of the conversation is about the contract, and now you're talking about the scope and the specifications being clearly set up at the beginning. Is that something, and excuse my ignorance on it, is that something that should be in the contract? Are we talking about the contract gets signed and that's a headline number and all of that? The scope that you're talking about is something that comes after the contract.
I'm talking about right from the very start of the design, so from feasibility onwards, if the scope is clearly defined. For example, the trying to achieve carbon neutral projects. if that's set out for all the key stakeholders throughout the life of the project, it's very clear whose responsibilities lie where, and that will minimize disputes or delays later on if there's clarity.
And I have heard in conversations, one of the sort of the cultural problems within construction is that often, because you have this contractual set of relationships, people are pulling in different directions. Is that, so you might have a contractor that's got its particular objectives and the consultant's got another set and the client has another. Is that part of this story about having common goals?
Yes, definitely. One of the mechanisms I've been part of before is the use of standing dispute boards, which is where the stakeholders agree at the start of the project to have a standing dispute board, which may meet monthly or every 2 or 3 months. And they basically resolve disputes before they become disputes. So when there is some sort of disagreement between the parties, people can sit around the table with the members of the dispute board, discuss what the issues are, and quite often resolve them. This was used very successfully in the Rio Olympics, where they trained a lot of the local resources to sit on the dispute boards. So it harnessed the local talent as well, and allowed them to have some interest in their own projects in resolving disputes before they caused delays or became actually disputes or went into arbitration.
Nasser, in his comments, he talked about this change in the kind of client side or the government side of the project market, moving from the traditional Ministry of Finance-backed government projects to the PIF and Vision 2030 delivered projects with broader ambitions. Are we seeing a change in the way projects are being set up? I mean, I know it's still early days in the Vision 2030 agenda, but are you seeing some of those changes happening, or do you think Saudi Arabia still has to sort of take on board some of these messages?
I think Haroon can probably comment on that. Haroon?
Okay.
I mean, I think what we are seeing, Richard, is certainly the tender process is improving. Nasser mentioned previously it used to be the race to the bottom, lowest price wins. To what extent that remains, I think Nasser is much better placed to comment on that. But certainly the due diligence during the tender process is certainly improving. And I think just to touch on the dispute side of things, we are seeing flexibility in terms of clients looking at alternative dispute resolution procedures and processes. Haramain Rail explored something different, Riyadh Metro explored something different, and some of these PIF projects are really looking at different techniques to unlock the challenges. So certainly we are seeing change in the way projects come together.
And so I'm going to come on to some of the questions that have come in just a moment. Kathy, I have one more question to you on your comments there. Now, towards the end of your comments, you mentioned dispute boards, project dispute boards. I don't know a lot about those, but perhaps you can tell us what a project dispute board is, and are they used in the Middle East or in Saudi Arabia? I don't have much knowledge of these.
They are. I think there's about 2 or 3 of the projects in Saudi have started to introduce them. I know on Expo 2020 in Dubai they have used them, so they've gradually been introduced more. But basically, it's usually 1 or 3, typically 3 members sitting on a dispute board for any one project. So where there's lots of contracts involved, you might have a team of 20 dispute board members, and then each party would pick one themselves with a third one neutrally. So from the agreed or approved list for the region's developments, there would be individual dispute boards for each contract. Those 3 DB members would then attend site, all by agreement of the parties at the start, at the inception. So this would be a contractual provision that they would meet regularly. And therefore, as it's by agreement, anything that comes out of what the dispute board recommend would become potentially binding under the contract if that's what they've agreed. So it would be a recommendation or potentially binding, depending on the contractual provisions.
So this is so the dispute boards are something set up within the framework of a specific project. It involves the project parties. It's not an outside adjudicator or something, and it's all specified at the beginning. What sort of what can you quantify, or is there any evidence of how much it speeds up the dispute resolution process?
Just going by experience on the Rio Olympics, I didn't actually work on it myself, but one of my colleagues worked closely with it. They very much minimized the disputes. I think there were 41 main contracts, and in the end, there were only 3 of them that had major disputes at the end.
Okay.
All of the dispute board members were trained by experienced practitioners from outside who came in and spent a lot of time with experienced construction professionals or legal professionals to train them on how to run them. And then they became, I think they met every quarter on all the projects, on the majority of them. And they were able to resolve the day-to-day disputes and in real time, rather than leaving them until they festered towards the end and became major delays with high costs.
Okay, well, thank you very much for that. I mean, that's a lot of, what your main message is: get it set up right at the beginning, get the scope agreed, get everything agreed, and that's one part of that. So thank you for that. And if anyone has questions for Kathy or if any of the other panelists about, or even comments about how to set up projects better so that Saudi Arabia can deliver this massive program, please send them in using the stage tab on the top right-hand corner. Now, Nasser, I have quite a lot of questions for you. I will just read them out. These are not in any particular order. So,
can I comment? Can I just comment briefly?
Yes, of course, of course.
I want to highlight that the level of transparency and accountability in Saudi have improved dramatically. And this results in many things. One of them, lowest price would always win. This is no longer the case, because whomever is the CEO of a company or a minister in one of the organizations who would sign off, he must feel so confident that this lowest bidder must be able to deliver. Otherwise, he is going to be held accountable. So people are now much more careful and thoughtful before.
So you sense that there is a real change, that kind of mindset change. You can feel that attitude is changing.
Absolutely. Furthermore, I believe we're one of the top countries in the world in terms of e-government. So everything is linked to your mobile now. In terms of companies, everything is online. Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Finance. So every single tender now is publicly available online. And you can see the budget allocated for each tender. And you can see the payment order for each payment for all the projects, all the government projects now. So it's no longer, it's gone somewhere, we cannot trace it. If the client is saying the right thing, then it must appear online. If it didn't appear, then we're probably messing you around. So the level of transparency, of accountability had improved significantly. The one more thing that's probably worth mentioning as well is the whole move into the PPP space, public-private partnerships. So the government is saying, why should I really get myself involved in the delivery of so many activities in the economy? The private sector should really step up, collaborate, cooperate, and deliver those services. So they've started with, and yesterday there was a presentation with the NCP, the National Center for Privatization, the CEO and a couple of their executives, where they were presenting the 16 sectors that are going through the privatization programs and initiatives. So the NCP is kind of the center where every ministry will come to, and they will support them in privatizing their activities. And
can I ask, sorry to cut you off, Nasser, I'm just conscious of time, but on this point about PPP, so Al Bawani to me, is a traditional contractor. PPP is a trend that the government wants to use private investors to deliver projects. For a traditional contractor, is PPP an attractive way, future opportunity for you, or is it, it's a different job, isn't it?
Yes, you are right. If you're a traditional contractor without the investment acumen and in-house expertise to really, again, step up to lead or be part of the PPP consortium, then you need to think twice, because again, the contract conditions are very different than your traditional EPC or FEDEC. The liabilities could be 125% of the contract value. However, there are advantages because you have control over the design if you're the EPC under the JV of the PPP. So there are some advantages, and everyone is motivated and incentivized for you to deliver on time because they're all aligned with you. So it's not that the client doesn't really care on sign off or
do you with that, you don't have to answer this because it might be commercially confidential, but is this an area that Al Bawani will be looking at, PPP?
Yeah, we're very proud that we won the first what is called social infrastructure PPP, which is building the first 60 schools in Mecca and Jeddah, and now we pre-qualified for building the second wave. The first one was called Wave 1. It's from Tatweer Building Company, and we've just achieved the financial close in December of last year. We've also won Jubail 3A along with a group of investors, desalination plant. It's the largest of its kind in the world in PPP. And the trend is going. We pre-qualified for the first hospital PPP in Medina, and for a number of other projects that I want to get into. But the trend is there, and the intent and the programs are being rolled now for market participants to get into and
congratulations. Congratulations on that. I want to get on to the questions now, if everyone is okay with that. Nasser, I'm going to ask you to speak a bit more, so we have a few questions for you. So I will just read these out. So Mr. Sawaf stated that the new norm has led to lesser competition, which is a good thing. What are his thoughts? So what are your thoughts, Nasser, on the ability of the Kingdom to deliver Vision 2030 with local contractors, since most of the big players are concerned with new requirements and may not be as flexible or as agile? So I guess this is about the local capacity and the role of local contractors in delivering Vision 2030.
It is a challenge, but you can see now that a number of players are teaming up and working together. So sometimes you compete, sometimes you're comparing notes, and sometimes you're teaming up. So yes, capacity has an issue because since 2015, government spending has slowed down and the vision kind of spending was picking up. So that transition caused a bit of disruption in the market, and also the inflationary pressure, the increase in regulations, it didn't help. So really, only the guys who are able to adopt are making it to this new stage. So yes, capacity is an issue, but the market is open for multinationals who can come in, work with local players or compete directly. So the opportunities are out there, but you always need to come. Don't think it's the Saudi in the 80s. You need to come with a clear value addition and a determination to make things happen.
Okay, thank you, Nasser. You can take a breather for a few minutes. I'll give you a break, and I will move. Kathy, I'll come back to you, and then I'll come to Haroon next. So we have a question here, Kathy. Well, I think it's more of a comment that you could react to, so I'll just read it out. The clear client's brief or scope is too broad of a term. The issue is level coordination and the detail of design. That is always the issue. Despite having adequate or agile protocols in place, it is still a major challenge to manage. that creates project risk. There needs to be more time given to the design phase. I think this is the point. There needs to be more time given to the design phase and a lot better verification of the design. So this person is making a comment, but Kathy, perhaps you might want to come back on that.
Yes, I would agree. It's always a challenge, particularly Nasser referred to earlier that the Saudi build their projects at such a fast rate. Unfortunately, the design phase is quite often squeezed, and they try to start on site with early design packages, and this will always be an ongoing issue. As long as the management of it is very clear, it shouldn't cause ongoing delays and costs. So when I talked earlier, I think I talked about defining the scope of work, but I acknowledge that there are likely to be changes in the scope. As long as the start point is clearly defined, and the systems or protocols to manage the changes that might arise, then it doesn't become as much of an issue. It would be lovely if we had as much time as we needed for the design phase and verification of the design, but unfortunately that's just not realistic in a lot of these projects, because work needs to start and the design does need to overlap with the construction. To get them built. So again, it's management of that, making sure everybody's on board with the same objectives and in agreement on how to manage the process. It should be absolutely not an issue going forward. And again, setting up the systems. I talked about technology. You quite often have designers from all around the world, particularly with the scope of work that's going on in Saudi. I'm sure there's going to be designers from all corners of the globe who are involved. So using technology to manage that would be very important. It
does seem to me, we hear about a lot about digitalization, especially over the past 12 months with COVID, the acceleration of digital transformation. But in construction, I hear a lot about digital twins, virtual twins, cloud-based project management, and BIM, advanced levels of building information modeling. Presumably that will remove a lot of these traditional problems, because if everyone's working to a digital twin, then there's no disagreement.
That's correct. Technology should make this a lot easier. And then going from a design phase through to construction phase, what people can do with drones now is just incredible, monitoring the progress of the works. They're talking about 6D BIM now. So they're talking about having the program, the quantum, everything all integrated into the one model. So yes, It should going forward make it easier and easier to manage across nations and the world, and also to manage change and any other potential issues as they arise.
I wonder if I can come to Nasser. Sorry, Nasser, I said I would give you a break, but I'm reneging already. On that point about digital investment, where does that fit on? And again, you don't have to reveal any secrets or anything, but are you now spending more on things like drones and cloud platforms and the digital stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have one of the largest BIM teams in Saudi. So we have a big team, and initially it started as kind of an initiative where we're doing BIM for some projects alongside our core engineering team, and we're gradually now folding in the BIM to be more the mainstream. We have the augmented reality for some projects where you have high-end specifications, so we can give the client a bit of feel of the final product, how it's going to look like. We have the 3D laser scanning to help with the as-built for projects that requires renovation, for instance. So it's back to the point of improving your efficiency, the productivity of your workforce. It's no longer a luxury, really. And it's becoming more of a necessity, especially if you have international designers. We have some outsourced offices as well that we use, and you need to use technology just to meet market demands and client demands faster and better. I just want to mention also one comment, I think in relation to multinationals and the time of the project and the design and what have you, and all the risks involved. I believe many international contractors, when they come over, they come and bid with relatively thin margins that they are used to in the US or Europe. where everything is pretty much calculated and fixed, and you expect everything to go according to plan. And in reality, many things might not go according to plan for whatever reason. So I think building that additional level of margin and buffer would make your life much easier, because you cannot just go to the client from the second month and tell them, oh, the design wasn't really clear, you know, please approve this variation order. That will not be a good start. So I think if you factor in higher risk margin or better overall margin from the beginning, assuming that things might not go exactly according to plan, you will be more relaxed and you will build more trust with clients.
Very good. They're very wise and valuable insights. Thank you, Nasser. Haroon, I'm sorry, I've left you unattended for a long time. If I can come back to your slides. Now, you've talked about the challenges in the construction side, the building projects market, the length of delays and the causes of delays. How does that compare with, say, the oil and gas sector or the utilities sector, the power and water? I'm thinking particularly on oil and gas, where someone like Aramco has so many projects and, you know, massive supply chain management processes. How does that compare, and what lessons can the construction industry learn from the oil and gas and the power and water side?
Sure, just bear with me 1 second.
Sure. You have a slide. Excellent.
I've got a slide. Here's one I made earlier. So if I look at the sectors, and again, this is really the beauty of CRUX, to drill down and look at comparisons between different sectors and how they perform. You can clearly see that in the oil and gas sector, if you look at the EOT claim, for example, it's the lowest of all of those, comparing it with buildings and power and utilities. Now, if you think about Saudi Aramco, for example, as an oil and gas developer, employer, very established processes, procedures, a robust contracting form, a very clear route to market for projects in terms of due diligence, planning, tender, and that in turn makes its way through into the project and how the project is delivered. So certainly you see the issues in dispute are different in these mega oil and gas projects, and I think one of the reasons we're seeing EOTs are lower is because of the kind of developer developing these big projects. Cost claims not hugely dissimilar between oil and gas and buildings, let's say, but I think what is important to remember, I saw one of the questions on the stage platform where the comment was that this seems a bit low. What is important to remember is the cost claims are made in different ways. So you may have a prolongation cost claim, you may have a disruption cost claim, you may have disputed variations. So cost claims are all made in different ways, and particular to a Aramco contract, there may be costs considered in different ways.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, go on, Richard.
I was just going to say that we're getting a bit low on time, so I want to just go to a question that's come in, which I wanted to put to you, Haroon. This doesn't relate to the slides. This is from somebody who's obviously working in Canada or has experience in Canada. It says some clients in Canada are exploring something called IPD, so integrated project delivery, in which all of the parties on a project, they collaborate closely with a shared goal. So I guess this is talking about alliancing contracts or, you know, setting up project teams. Is this something, and you may not be able to answer this, but is this a realistic, should this be an objective, and is it a realistic objective in Saudi Arabia?
I mean, if you ask me personally, it should absolutely be an objective. And we've seen, the colleague mentions Canada, we've seen collaboration being used successfully for the delivery of the London Olympics, for example. Collaboration, KPIs for collaboration is certainly being pushed by such as industry bodies such as the RICS, etc., and the collaborative tools to deliver projects. Is it being done in Saudi? I think we're getting to awareness of the collaborative approach. I think we've still got a long way to go before we can truly say that projects are being delivered in a collaborative way. But I would say it's an absolute goal that would.
It does strike me from what, as an outsider looking at, when I've heard about alliancing, it requires a pretty fundamental shift in mindset in the way traditional construction contracts are set up to move to alliancing. It's quite a big change, isn't it?
It's a big change. It's a big change in people, in behaviours. It talks to a number of issues, how people interact with one another. And I think someone mentioned on stage, we need mindset change, and there has to be mindset stage to enable collaboration to work as it should. Sorry, okay. I stopped sharing the slides, Richard. If you want me to.
That's okay. That's okay. Actually, okay. Since we've broken in the conversation, I want to move to another question with Nasser. Now, Nasser, this is a question that has come in, and it refers to your point about tenders announcements. So it's a two-part question. The first part: which platforms are you referring to that has information on tenders budgets? So that's the first question. The second question is: how can we have a better chance to work with companies like Al Bawani? So two-parter.
Yeah, the platform is called I'timad in Arabic. I think in English the spelling is I think it's ETMAD, I'timad.
ETMAE.
I probably this is the spelling, but in Arabic it's I'timad. So,
well, what we can do is we can circulate this afterwards with people to sort of give them the information. Thank you for that. And is that a government website, is it?
Yes, that's the platform, and it's kind of Ministry of Finance platform. So this is where you get the tenders, you see the budgets, and all the information that you want. But for in terms of how to capture opportunities, I believe you need to look at your targeted clients. Depending on your discipline, is it the Ministry of Tourism? Is it some of the PIF companies? Is it the Entertainment Authority? And I recommend you start presenting your case and your credentials to have that first mover edge.
Sorry, Nasser, several people have now sent in a message on the stage tab. It's I'timad. In English spelling, which I think is what you said. It's ETIMAD. So if
one of my able colleagues just brought me the note, so it's EITIMAD.
Excellent, thank you.
Sure.
And so people can see it in the stage tab as well. Sorry, I interrupted you just on that point about working with Al Bawani.
Yeah, so I believe it's better to see who is your end customer depending on your discipline, and try to present your credentials to them, and then they'll tell you, oh, by the way, we have a big project coming up that would require your services, and talk to some of the players that will be invited or shortlisted. Many of the PIF companies or many of the really demanding ministries and organizations, they have a pre-qualification process. So you might be a specialist, so you cannot qualify as the main contractor, but they'll tell you, oh, the list of qualified contractors are, those 4 or 5, and then you can talk to them or see who you're comfortable with. That kind of would be the best way, probably, to present your credentials and capture some business in the market.
Okay. Well, we have one minute left for the panel discussion. And I'm going to ask you, Nasser, to do the impossible thing. Somebody has asked about the best opportunities. So in 1 minute, where do you see the major opportunities for construction projects in Saudi?
I think PPPs is going to be a trend that will carry on. There is no way back, because the government wants to reduce their capex and move to an opex model. The Vision 2030 projects, programs, initiatives through PIF or some of the major institutional investors in Saudi. Probably those two are kind of my best bets.
Well, congratulations. That was a brilliant answer in less than a minute. So amazing. We've run out of time. So thank you Kathy, Nasser and Haroon, a brilliant discussion. I can't believe time went so quickly. And thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us today and for sending in so many great questions. I'm sorry that we couldn't answer all of your questions. There were just too many. But what we'll do is we will circulate the questions with the panelists, and they will be able to answer directly if they can. Now, now that the panel discussion is over, the platform, the Hopin platform that is in front of you will stay live for another 30 minutes to enable a bit of networking. Now, if you go to the left-hand side of your screen, you will see that there is a tab there that says networking. And if you click on that icon, the networking icon, you can then, it will introduce you to other people on this discussion, people in the audience and on the panel, and you can just meet and chat. And I think it's a sort of speed networking. You get to speak to somebody for 30 seconds or a minute or something, and then if you want to follow up, you can arrange private things. So use the networking icon that is on the left-hand side of your screen, and that will be open for another 30 minutes. But for Nasser, for Kathy, for Haroon, and for myself, our time is up on the panel. Thank you all for a brilliant discussion, and I really look forward to continuing this in further forums. Have a great day.